As the sun began to set on the golden age of Hollywood cinema, as cultural trends evolved along with a new generation of young people with their own interests and desires to tell stories in personal and unique ways, it seemed an inevitability that conventional filmmaking methods and storytelling techniques would change accordingly. This evolution is probably most evident in France during the late 1950s, mostly due to the efforts of a few young filmmakers among the likes of Jean-Luc Godard, François Truffaut, Claude Chabrol, and Agnès Varda. The lack of imagination and innovation in what had become the standards in the movie industry pushed them to spearhead an entirely new cinematic form, one with unprecedentedly low budgets, dynamic camera techniques, and deeply personal stories enriched by their individual philosophies. In what came to be known as the French New Wave, the medium of film was shaped into intimate art, with filmmakers becoming the authors or auteurs of their work. They shaped every aspect of the production, creating the characters and stories, often with inspiration from life experiences, crafting the screenplays, and directing with an intense attachment to the material. New methods of filming largely stemmed from the meager budgets. Filmmakers were forced to take advantage of natural light and handheld camera techniques. The increase in fluidity of camera movement gave their work vitality, a sense of self-awareness. Whereas classic Hollywood films tended to obscure editing as naturally as possible, New Wave filmmakers consciously broke the illusion of reality in a way that shocked audiences. Through jump cuts and freeze frames, they reminded their audiences that they were watching a film, forcing them to pay attention to what the movie was saying. Not to say that these films discarded realism, not at all. Subject matters examined controversial issues, often through the lens of children, with a focus on candor and authenticity. This strayed from the conventional idea of movies as escapist fantasies, never forcing audiences to confront politically important topics. In this way, the spirit of the French New Wave was the foundation of modern independent cinema. In 2017, filmmaker Sean Baker released his fifth feature film and his third notable critical success following Starlet in 2012 and Tangerine in 2015. This was The Florida Project, written, directed, produced, and edited by Baker. To me, this movie is the epitome of independent cinema. Following in the footsteps of Truffaut's The 400 Blows, The Florida Project examines social issues through the eyes of children, and in their adolescent ignorance to reveal simple, fundamental flaws in what are generally characterized as all-encompassing and intricate structural problems in America. Baker explores the inequality and daily struggles experienced by those living on the edge of poverty. Showcasing this, he chooses to portray the lives of a single mom and her 6-year-old daughter living literally on the margins, a few minutes outside the border of Walt Disney World. The notion of Disney is pervasive throughout the film, representing a utopian capitalist dream. These characters are living on the periphery of fantasy. Their motel is called the Magic Castle, just as all the neighboring residences capitalize on various Disney properties. But the most endearing and revealing aspect of this movie is the way it shows how kids living on this economic plane are still able to create their own magic. Mooney and her friends run past a market called Orange World and a knockoff Disney gift shop on their way to an ice cream parlor. They've created their own attractions, like spinning off balconies onto a car and riding grocery carts across a busy intersection. Mooney takes her friend Jancy on a safari to a field with cows behind the motel, reflecting the Kilimanjaro safaris in Animal Kingdom. And they later go to Mooney's favorite tree, which is reminiscent of the Tree of Life. On a darker note, these people can't afford to attend theme park shows, so they stand and cheer for a violent brawl in the parking lot and the burning of an abandoned house. Baker and his cinematographer Alexis Zabe also contribute to the magical aesthetic, shooting on 35mm film and capturing the beauty and the aesthetics of traditionally unappealing metropolitan Florida suburbs. The color grading brings to the surface a vividly pastel palette, emulating the vibrancy of an amusement park, at least in the idealistic mind of a child. The events that take place in this film should reflect the misery of financial hardship, and yet, through the use of a child protagonist, Baker shows how the incessant optimism of childhood perseveres. Yes, Mooney has absorbed many of the poor behavior she's witnessed growing up, and her sense of humor is mean-spirited. But it's difficult to blame this on anything but the economic system which has trapped her and her mother Haley on the verge of homelessness with no opportunity for upward financial mobility. The movie makes it clear that Mooney and Haley are benevolent people at heart. Mooney's always making the best out of the unfortunate circumstances, and Haley, despite her flaws, obviously cares for the well-being of her daughter. It's devastating to watch Haley becoming more and more frustrated with the system forcing her to remain stagnant in a fruitless financial position with no choice but to resort to unfortunate measures to keep her and her daughter out of homelessness. The Florida Project has an interesting take on the conventional family dynamic in mainstream movies. Rather than a traditional father figure, the motel manager Bobby, played by a terrific Willem Dafoe, is protective of Haley, Mooney, and her friends, all the while dealing with his own issues operating a low-income motel. The fact that he's able to remain patient and provide guidance to both Haley and the children is heartwarming, and one of the film's more optimistic takes on human nature. Technically, the film owes much to the trends initiated by the French New Wave. There's a recurring shot motif to track the kids as they run or walk through their habitat, always keeping the camera down low with larger subjects like adults mostly out of focus. Examples of this include when Mooney and her friend Scooty are watching a couple, devastated that they accidentally booked a room at this quote-unquote welfare slum motel, and later when Mooney is watching her mom pawn off stolen magic bands. The final scene was secretly shot on an iPhone 6s, and it tracks Mooney and Jancy as they finally escape their lower-class lifestyles and run through Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. The change in format creates a shift in tone which was intended. Baker explains, "I was using the iPhone 6s Plus for the Florida project, and it has what's called a rolling shutter, and it gives it this hyperactivity and a very different, jarring feel, and we liked that. We could have shot on a 5S and made it more smooth, but we actually wanted the audience to know that we were jumping from 35mm to another medium." The ending is a culmination of the film's youthful fantasy, gorgeous in its simplicity and suggesting that the mind of a child is beyond the uselessly intricate and hopeless economic world of adults. To them, Disney is the happiest place on earth, because it represents dreams and wishes and all the youthful fantasies that fade as we age. It exemplifies how hope is the one quality that unites us all, showing how there's always a path forward, no matter the circumstance.
Do you know why this is my favorite tree?
Why?
Because it's tipped over. And it's still growing.
Independent cinema owes much of its stylistic and thematic influences to the work of French New Wave filmmakers like Godard and Truffaut, and the Florida Project is, in my opinion, one of the greatest examples of independent film. The way it captures youthfulness in its visuals and camera movement, and showcases a relevant issue compelling viewers to think and even consider steps they can take to solve issues of social and economic inequality, are very much characteristic of the possibilities of cinema, and an illustration of what it should strive to be.